How are you?
No, please. What's going on, boys?
Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. It's good to see you.
It's been a whole week.
An entire week.
Legends League.
Legends
Ready?
League.
Let's start, boys.
Let's go.
Ready?
Kick it off.
Draw now. 3,
Yeah.
2, 1.
I wish we could actually prepare for these things. We need to do this before and be like, who's it?
Oh, we've got a clanger. We've got an absolute clanger.
Who's it?
Okay, I don't know, actually. All right, boys. We've got Amanda Nunez versus John Jones.
I'll go to Nunes, bro.
Off the cuff.
Oh, man.
Excuse me, I'm just
You got two
pouring
legends.
myself a proper whiskey.
Are we going with pound for pound?
So first up is
As is.
As
John,
is.
John Jones probably rips her head off and then drinks from it or something. Like it's.
Yeah.
Dude, she's a woman.
Yeah, come on. That's
So?
abuse.
So is it sexist to say that he would rip anyone's head off?
No, that's true. This is
Yeah.
very true. He would.
Yeah,
rip
there we
Guys,
go.
if you're a little bit shocked at how we're speaking about this, there is context.
Yeah.
Go and have a listen to our previous episode where we talk about whether Amanda Nunez could and should fight a male in the UFC.
Yeah.
So it's actually pretty timely, this one.
Predictions, boys. What are we saying? Let's be real.
John Jones
As
as is.
As his John Jones is gonna.
But let's be fair though. Amanda would fuck all of us up, like with her arms tied behind her back. So it's got nothing to do with male female. It's got to do with she's John Jones.
Yeah, and she would destroy us all three together. We'd
the
all
same time.
at the same time. It wouldn't even be a contest. But yeah,
Yes, I agree.
John Jones takes it pound for pound.
Pound for pound. If Amanda and John Jones were the same weight,
Yeah.
Dude, that's tricky because she punches like a fucking machine.
she punches well above her weight.
Yeah.
Well above her weight.
I think if it's pound for pound and it stays on the feet, I think Nunes might take it. She's just so accurate and she hits like a truck. But John Jones off the feet is also ridiculous. So
Yeah, I'd still give it to John Jones. I mean,
If we
John
had to
Jones
go
is
off, if we had to
anyone.
go on everything that we we're speaking about in the previous episode, we've got to go with Johnny Bones. He's mastered that boy.
because you're sold on the fact that he's the GOAT. So I mean, I don't know, but Nunes is the GOAT of females, right? She's also not been given the opportunity to prove that she can beat a male in the division.
What about Ronda Rousey?
Oh my God.
What about Ronda Rousey? Sean?
She's a WWE champion.
Shaun, she's so 2017. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Cheers, boys.
By the way.
Let's kick off.
Oh, is that Stella? Look at that answer.
This is
Stella.
coincidence, by the way.
Yeah,
This is,
huge coincidence. We're in two different places in the world and we both bought Stella. Legit.
And we normally buy tins.
That's
cans.
Stella.
Yeah, it's Stella.
There's nothing like a good old tinny. Little tinny for the boys.
The South Africans would understand that one.
Fucking tinny.
Yeah, so you guys go Jones. I would say standing up it would be Nunes, but yeah, Jones
Yeah,
wins
but
it
that's
on
not,
the ground.
Craig, that's not a prediction because it's a no holds barred fight. So you have to take everything into account.
Well, the amount of
Please adjust your reality.
Okay, the amount of weight cutting gets him down to that level. There would be nothing left of him. So I still go Nunes. I'll go Nunes just because I rate her very highly. It's just, oh man,
She's a skilled fighter.
We're moving on swiftly.
Yes.
Man.
Last night, something seismic happened in the world of MMA. Demetrious Johnson, Mighty Mouse, the greatest consensus flyweight that has ever lived, went up in a title match against Adriano Moraes in one championship in Singapore and lost.
Yeah.
Talk us through this one, boys.
in
What
the
happened?
in the second round.
Yeah, man.
Man, it was a really good uppercut. That initial uppercut from Rice just put him put DJ on the back foot, and I think he was already dazed by that point, and he was the way that he was trying to get up, like from the ground, he posted up, and in an MMA match where the rules include knees to the head, you shouldn't be posting up that way. He should have gone for the legs. He should have done something else, but essentially he posted up and put his head in place for the knee.
Do you think that that's pure habit?
No,
Fighting
I
in a
mean-
league with
What do you mean, Craig?
fighting in a league where that's not allowed. So
For how long?
I mean, how many years is that? He was 33 fights deep in the UFC. So
Steep,
deep,
son.
deep. He was 33 fights deep. So
So we need to give context. We were joking about that just before we started.
I got Stipe's name wrong in the last episode. If you
No. Hold on. He got Stipe's name horribly wrong. And then sorry to put you on blast, Craig. Before this episode, he asked us if Stipe's name is pronounced Stipe. Beautiful.
Guys,
I am
Stipe.
fully Western, and
Yeah.
and it's spelled
It
Stipe.
shows, bro. It shows.
Fully
Yeah.
Western in the East. in the Middle
Western
East.
in the Middle East, yes. But yeah,
Okay, but this is a pertinent point, right? Because he spent years in the UFC, where we've spent half an episode talking about the unified rules of MMA, which one of them includes a grounded fighter, which is usually a fighter that is on their knees, in which case it is illegal to strike a knee to the head, which DJ has been very vocal about, funnily enough, following Aljamain Sterling's fight with Pierre Leon, where Pierre Leon got disqualified in a bantamweight title fight because of an illegal knee. And DJ came out saying, well, grounded fighters stall the fight. So knees to the head should be allowed on a grounded fighter. Well, hey, DJ, what you say now, fam?
I think he still supports it, man.
No, he does.
It is what it is. It's a fight. I mean, you can't be like, well, at this point, you're not really allowed to do this. Come on.
I mean,
we're fighting, or we playing patty cake?
He did come out right after the fight and say, listen, I'm 34 fights deep now. It was bound to happen. Someone's bound to knock you out.
Stop saying deep. It's getting weird.
Okay. How old is DJ now, by the way?
He's 34.
34.
What, is he older? I think
32,
he's
34.
I think he's 34. But here, this is completely off topic, but very relevant. When fighters say things like that, it just takes me back to one person, and that's Floyd Money Mayweather. He never had a bad day. 50-0, he never lost. And all the greatest fighters in the world will always tell you, this does happen. If you are this deep into your career, or if you've had this amount of fights and you're competing at the top level for so long, you're going to take some L's to your name.
You are.
Except for Floyd.
Yeah.
Did.
That's true. And that's true. I mean, who was
technically John Jones as well, but blemishes, asterisks.
Yeah, he
Khabib.
took some losses. Yeah, but John Jones took some losses in the courtroom. So what can you do? Khabib is a disgrace. Khabib is a ridiculously talented fighter that walks around at 200.
Oh, jeez. Tell us how you really feel, Craig.
It's unacceptable, and
it doesn't like how much weight he cuts.
But this is my point. Is John Jones has now gone out of his way. He's undefeated technically with that asterisk, but he wants to prove that he's the greatest. The only way to do that, show that you're doing that by going a level up. And I mean, Khabib wouldn't even have to go a level up. He'd still have to weight cut for a division above the one he fights in. It's fucking ridiculous. So that's my asterisk on his name.
Well, that one championship has very different rules from weight division perspective than the UFC. What happened last night in the flyweight world title fight was that they actually fought at what would be considered bantamweight in the UFC. They fought at 135. So One Championship has a philosophy about not requiring their fighters to undergo such significant and hectic weight cuts. I don't know the full story,
In
but
fact,
that's pretty
it's
interesting.
legislated. It's in their policies. They will check when they're doing testing throughout the camps, and when you're doing your weigh-ins, they'll actually check the volume of water in your body, making sure that you're not dehydrated for the weigh-ins.
They don't do that
So,
in the UFC, right?
no, they don't.
Could not give a
The-
fuck.
So yeah, One Championship have got it right. They got a lot more weight divisions, as far as I know. They've got more weight divisions
not
than the
sure.
UFC. I think
Not
they
sure.
do. And yeah, they keep track of their fighters' the hydration throughout that weight cut process. So they really do care about their fighters more than the UFC,
So,
in my opinion.
so I mean, you've got someone passing out on the actual scales at the weigh, and when do you decide? Okay, we need to make a change to something like One Championship, who's got it right, and you don't see that happening.
They won't, because it would directly impact their income. The more weight divisions you've got, the less iconic the winners of those divisions are. Because if you have 10 champions, it's less impactful than 3 champions.
Hey, and you know, this can be there's proof of concept here. Look at boxing. Other than potentially the heavyweight division, with the amount of champions, world champions that boxing has, first of all, in the amount of weight divisions, which is also way more than MMA. Second of all, with the different sanctioning bodies and promotions, you have way more champions in each weight division and way more weight divisions. It really does. To Shaun's point, the UFC have got that right from a promotional perspective and a brand building and marketing perspective. They've got that right, because anyone who watches UFC will have a much better chance of rattling off all the names of every single champion of all the different weight divisions than in boxing.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
you've done that at the cost of your fighters.
Yeah, but they don't care. They don't care about the fighters. Fighters come and go. The top champions they take care of. I mean, look at the way they market these title fights. Look at the way they market the fights with the big names. It's all about the money. They don't care about the fighters' well-being. If you make it to the top, they'll take good care of you.
If Dana could hear you say that.
I don't think he'd give a shit. I don't think he listens to our podcast, mate.
Dana, if you are listening, come on the show, mate.
Dana,
come on the show,
Bro.
That's fucking illegal.
But yeah, it's
Okay.
that knee was brutal, man, and it was a proper KO. Like DJ had no defenses after that knee hit him. Man,
It's tough. It's tough for DJ, and this was the first live telecast on US television from One Championship.
Oh man.
And obviously the majority of DJ's fan base is American, so shame. I do feel for him. I still think he's a great champion.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question, boys. In our previous episode, when we were discussing the GOAT of MMA, and DJ was well up there in the mix, and we spoke about a potential pound-for-pound Grand Prix, a theoretical, hypothetical tournament between John Jones, Demetrious Johnson, Anderson Silva, and Georges St. Pierre, pound for pound. So if they were all at the same weight, same kind of frame and size, from a martial arts skill level, who would come out on top? And I think you both said Mighty Mouse.
Let's just say that didn't age well. First of all, but how many fights has John Jones gone through in the UFC now?
John Jones his record is 26-1. I think he had 3 or 4 fights outside of the UFC before.
Okay.
So I think he's 20 plus.
Okay.
Well, what's your point?
No, I was just wondering, like, if he gets to 34-1, then still contestable. then
Remember,
it still stands.
That comes down to that point where just because you've got a loss, does that make you less of a GOAT? Yeah, you had a bad day. I mean, it was a really good uppercut, but does that make that person a GOAT? Does that make Moraes? Okay, to be fair, Moraes has been dominating One Championship while DJ was dominating UFC. So, I mean, let's not downplay Moraes's and he's had a lot more to deal with. There's a shitload more competition in One Championship compared to UFC.
Let me flip the script for you. If you are unbeaten, does that improve your argument for being a GOAT?
It would have to. It would have to. I
Yeah,
mean, if we're
But then
looking,
by virtue of that fact, is the opposite not also true?
yeah, but I mean it's one. It's
What?
probably the biggest factor, but it's not the only factor.
Why are you trying to sell us a junkie? What's going on here, Jay?
See, dude, you give me whiplash. I
I do.
blanked out for a
No,
second.
no.
there.
Listen, I do love Jones as a fighter. There's just too much around his name that is very negative to make him the GOAT.
Okay, but this is,
once again,
this is
if
what
he
I'm
knocks
asking.
out Ngannou, it's very difficult to argue
Hold
the
on,
fact that he
boys.
is a GOAT.
Let me bring us back on track here.
Yeah.
Does your prediction stand? Do you still think Demetrious Johnson beats John Jones in a pound for pound theoretical matchup?
Pound for pound, if I had to go from Demetrious Johnson to anyone, I would go to GSP.
But didn't you also say in the previous episode that you thought Demetrious Johnson, you stated GSP as your GOAT, but in our hypothetical pound for pound matchup Grand Prix tournament, pretty sure that you said DJ would come out on top.
I did, yeah, I did. But now, to your point, the loss does matter in this case because they're both awesome guys. They both have got really good records. But GSP's he's different. He's I don't know. I think in this case, because of the loss in the second round to a relatively routine uppercut during a sort of a scramble type, because it was essentially a flurry. They were both going for each other and missing like 3 or 4 punches before the uppercut came in when I think DJ was actually going in for a takedown or something, or he was just sort of low down. Yeah, it was a pretty routine sort of uppercut in the second round. He caught him wanting essentially.
Yeah,
GSP hasn't been caught wanting.
Who wins the Grand Prix?
I'd say GSP.
Craig?
I'm a GSP fanboy, right?
Yeah, but I still think DJ. I think he's the most technically gifted fighter out of that list.
He's very good. The way that he switches between stances, I mean, he's controlling that fight. Moraes, he kept pushing Moraes to the fence, and Moraes was doing a really good job of circling out constantly. But he was controlling that. He was controlling the center of that octagon. Essentially, Moraes was on the back foot the whole fight, most of the fight. There wasn't much of a fight, but most of that first round.
But it proves one ridiculously well-timed landed punch can end anyone. And to take away that status of like my version of GOAT, I can't do that because of that.
Yeah, it's something interesting. I also saw Moraes's ground game, and he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. But when he was on the ground in half guard with Mighty Mouse, he was switching sides. He wasn't passing around the right side. He was passing around the left.
But he
which is
couldn't.
unorthodox.
From what I was watching, he couldn't pass that. He was in half guard, and he couldn't pass he couldn't pass DJ's guard.
He didn't want to pass. He didn't want to necessarily pass because remember, half guard's a really good control position from the top. If you've got the cross face and you've got the underhook, so you're holding the guy essentially by his arm and his head. But most guys are training to defend their right hand side or their stronger side, which is most often their right hand side. Essentially, lying on your right hand side hip, defending the pass. Moraes went the other way. He went to the left hand side, which is a very, very interesting choice in MMA specifically, because if you screw that up and the guy from the bottom knows what they're doing, you get swept very easily, unless Moraes trains passing on the left hand side very often.
So
but yeah, it was really interesting.
So yeah, my question on that is, you say if he screws that up, he'll get taken, but if he gets it right, does that catch?
It's easier to get it right. It's easier to get it right if the guy's not trained in defending the left hand side. Most people don't. I don't train the left hand side. When guys are trying to pass my guard, going left is a pretty good option for passing my guard. I'm not
BJJ competitors in Brighton and surrounds, take notes.
Yeah.
There we go.
He's shit.
But again, remember, it goes both ways. You need to be able to pass on the left hand side as well. It's a completely different movement. So it's not just about being able to defend that side, but they're going to be as pathetic passing that way as I am defending that way. So it's you got a bit of the both. Yeah.
Interesting side note segue. Shaun, how tall are you?
Wow.
160 centimeters. 5'2".
5'2". So
how to throw your mate under the bus.
DJ, interestingly, DJ is 5'3", so he's around your height.
Yeah, he's like an inch taller
Um,
than me. Yeah.
Yeah.
guys, if you want to see context, you need to go and see the photos on our about page,
Well,
you'll
because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and deception going on.
how tall are you,
friends.
Jay?
I don't know actually. I think I'm about 168, 170.
You'll be 168 because you and I are exactly the same height. So you should be 168. Yeah.
Okay, but that was a segue. Now, speaking of pound for pound tournaments, speaking of the greatest of all time in mixed martial arts, speaking of the likes of DJ, for example, going up against John Jones, Amanda Nunez going up against John Jones, I want to introduce something, and I'm going to do it as delicately as I possibly can, because it is a touchy subject in the world of martial arts for a lot of people. But I think that it's a topic we have to explore. The topic, or the subject of the topic, is Bruce Lee. Okay, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of Bruce Lee?
Man, it's the first guy I watched fighting on TV. You know what I mean? He's the guy that got you at the age of 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, punching your teddy bears and your pillows and things.
Brothers.
Bruce
Brothers,
Lee,
yeah.
bro. I'm Bruce Lee. I'm Bruce Lee. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? When you're playing role play, it's
He was aspirational always.
What is the general public's prevailing opinion about Bruce Lee?
Undefeated. Undefeatable.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
The
No one stands a chance.
casually and mainstream and maybe outside of the world of MMA, for example, he is widely regarded as the greatest martial artist of all time. Correct?
Yeah.
If you speak to people about Bruce Lee, and for a long time, I was in this echelon of people. When they think of somebody being conceptually the greatest martial artist that ever lived, basically what that means is like he'll fuck anyone up, right? Doesn't really matter who. Like you cannot beat Bruce Lee. He was the greatest martial artist of all time. Doesn't matter if he's got 20 guys coming at him or a guy who's twice his size and twice his weight. Doesn't really matter who the opponent is. In unarmed combat, Bruce Lee was the greatest. He'll beat anyone up. And I mean, the road that I'm about to take us down, the rabbit hole that we're about to dive into, is in no way meant to take anything away from Bruce Lee's legacy, because Shaun, you are 100% right. He is the icon that made people, that still to this day makes people fall in love with martial arts and want to study it. Right? He is the messiah of martial arts, and admittedly the godfather of mixed martial arts. Yeah. Most people in MMA will tell you that. He was the most influential martial artist of all time, hands fucking down. Right? That is unarguable. One of the greatest philosophers of martial arts. He bridged the gap between the East and the West in the world. But let me put it this way to kick things off. Would Bruce Lee beat a UFC heavyweight in a mixed martial arts match?
Heavyweight, or should we go with his weight category?
Heavyweight.
Okay, wait, before we kick off.
We'll progress the argument. For now, let's start here.
Yeah. Well, first I wanted to ask, how heavy is Chuck Norris?
Chuck Norris, I don't know. I can tell you. So Bruce Lee was 5'6", which is about 172 centimeters, so slightly taller than me and you, Craig. And he weighed between 130 to 140 pounds, averaged between those weights, which is around 58 to 64 kilograms. At his prime, they say when he was training and when he was filming his movies, he was at around 64 kilograms, which is 141 pounds. So technically, he would have fought at bantamweight or featherweight in mixed martial arts.
Okay, we can see your camera, your phone.
Sorry, I need to see.
Busted.
I need to see
Busted.
how much.
Busted big
Yeah.
time, yeah.
I need to see how much Chuck Norris weighs because they actually fought, right?
No,
They
were
fought
in the ring
on
together.
set, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
They
but
didn't actually
apparently,
fight.
no. Apparently, they actually did. They did a sparring thing offset.
No,
So okay, well, he
No,
weighs
it's a myth.
158 pounds.
it's a myth.
It's a myth.
Okay, myth busted. Fuck.
So let's get back. Yeah, along with
Bubble
yourself.
popped.
So let's get back to the question. Would
Mhm.
Bruce Lee beat a UFC heavyweight in a mixed martial arts match?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I mean, okay. So
Shaun, have you ever taken a pin, pricked a balloon? Because now you have.
So
Please proceed.
Okay, let me explain something. Okay,
Mhm.
so jujitsu. I'm going to use that as an analogy for this whole argument. Black belts 10 years ago, maybe a bit longer. Let's say black belts 20 years ago can be compared to blue belts today.
Mhm.
Okay. Why? Because of the evolution of martial arts. It's like it's improved exponentially. It's not just like we're slightly better. Black belts just didn't know as many techniques, just because they didn't have to. It was very much self-defense oriented, very little sport jiu-jitsu at the time. But the way that it evolved, guys are today able to pull off submissions that black belts, blue belts I'm talking about, even really good white belts, would be able to pull off submissions on black belts 20 years ago because they just wouldn't even know that that submission existed. So I think we can apply the same logic to martial artists that lived, I mean, during Bruce Lee's time, and I think Bruce Lee specifically, he was very talented, very, very talented, and he understood the discipline and the respect and the concept of mixed martial arts. What was that martial arts that he
Jeet Kune Do.
Jeet Kune Do, which is essentially a hybrid of a whole bunch of different martial arts, right?
It is the philosophy of mixed martial arts. In essence, it was use what's useful for you and discard what isn't.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that ideally, I mean, most jiu-jitsu fighters go by the same philosophy. I mean, Roger Gracie, one of the best grapplers in the world, you don't see him doing any funny things. He discards everything that has any chance of creating any sort of risk or is in any way detrimental to his preservation of energy while he's fighting. One of the biggest things in a fight. So yeah, I mean, that Jeet Kune Do can be applied to jiu-jitsu even, I suppose, if it's considered philosophy.
Jay's selling us junkies, you selling us cuddling. This is getting ridiculous, boys. every opportunity you get.
Junkie cuddling.
Craig, what do you think?
Well, yes, I think he loses to probably the top 10 heavyweight guys. But if you watch, I mean, there's videos out there. I don't know. These are myths. You're probably going to burst that bubble too. But the precision that Bruce Lee comes in with the nunchucks and stuff, he plays table tennis with nunchucks. That is unbelievable.
Isn't it real?
No.
I believed for the longest time that was real.
It's so upsetting. he also lights matches at the end of the nunchuck. That's probably not real too.
I literally said to my wife the other day, Bruce Lee can play ping pong nunchucks. What's wrong?
Dude, I don't like that video isn't real, but he probably could. I mean, he was exceptionally talented with the nunchucks. Okay, so let's level this out a little bit more. So one of the biggest arguments against Bruce Lee, and in fact, all martial artists who are actors, is that they're not real martial artists. They're just actors on set and on film. Now, I can categorically, or I think we can collectively and categorically discard that argument. Bruce Lee is one of the most talented and greatest martial artists of all time. One of. Right? He was basically one giant fucking fast twitch muscle. Yeah. He was ridiculously conditioned.
He would probably be ridiculously
quick.
He would probably be UC champion if he trained today. What do you think?
So here's the thing. Now, I don't know if I'm playing devil's advocate or if I genuinely believe this. I think deep down I do, since I've really got into understanding MMA and training different martial arts and especially full contact. But I'm going to pitch it as devil's advocate anyway. Now, basically what I'm saying is that Bruce Lee is not the undefeatable, indomitable human being that mainstream movie culture and martial arts society makes him out to be. Now, I love Bruce Lee with all my heart and soul. He was my inspiration to get into martial arts. I studied Kung Fu as my first martial art. I grew up watching his movies. They were on my VHS player.
You just kicked your 7-year-old self in the nuts.
Yeah. and so this has taken a long time for me to come around to. But the reality of martial arts, the reality of real life fighting, is that you can be a great martial artist. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can beat up anyone. All right. And the other thing is, what I used to believe was, and I believed it blindly, and no one could ever tell me otherwise. Doesn't matter how big you were, how strong you were, what your weight was, what martial art you trained in, how many fights you had under your belt. It didn't matter. Like, there was no way anyone could ever beat Bruce Lee. He was too quick, too precise, too clever, too strong, too powerful. He was the ultimate martial artist. He was this hero that his movies and popular culture make him out to be. Is that the case? So let me present two things to you really quickly, and then we can dive into that. Now, there are arguments to be made for the fact that somebody who weighs 64 kilograms can still beat anyone in the world. Okay. I've got a couple of quotes here that I'm going to go over. Now, Stephen Thompson, Wonderboy, who is a UFC fighter in the welterweight division, had a 57-0 record as a professional and amateur kickboxer before joining the UFC. Now, Wonderboy knew Joe Louis. Joe Louis is one of the greatest karate fighters and kickboxers of all time. One of the original kickboxers, actually. Joe Louis trained with Bruce Lee. He knew Joe Louis, and he says that Louis told him that one of the hardest kicks he'd ever endured was from Bruce Lee. Now, bear in mind, Louis was a heavyweight kickboxer. Okay. And Bruce Lee is the one who inspired Louis to transition from point fighting karate to full contact kickboxing. One of the other tenets and core foundations of Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do was realism. It was the discarding of singular, structured, and limited styles to just pull from all the different styles that he studied what worked for him and discard everything that didn't work to the point of being able to use these things in real life combat situations, something that we speak often about. Jeet Kune Do is the epitome, Shaun, of your philosophy of martial arts in general, i.e., if it's not really effective and useful as a form of self-defense or fighting, why do people really do it? Now, the actor and martial artist that Craig mentioned earlier, Chuck Norris, who famously fought Bruce Lee on the big screen in the movie The Way of the Dragon. The Way of the Dragon.
The Way of the Dragon, yeah.
So in the audio commentary of that DVD, John Ben, who was an actor, he played the movie's mob boss. He asked Chuck Norris who would win in a real life fight. And Norris responded almost immediately saying, Bruce, of course, nobody can beat him. To your point, Craig. Now, the other thing is...
And by the way, Chuck Norris is a jiu-jitsu black belt.
Yeah.
And a karate black belt. Yeah. And probably a host of other martial arts.
Yeah. He's all right. I mean, the memes don't exist for nothing. Yeah. He was also a Texas Ranger at one point.
Like in real life.
Yeah, he was famous for that.
There's a generation that is completely lost on what you just said.
Completely lost. Mate, just to go off topic quickly, sorry. But have you guys ever watched The Expendables?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's in number 2 where he comes in and like they're all going to war against this whole crowd and they don't understand what's going on because people are just dying left, right, and center. And then comes Chuck Norris walking out of the smoke Literally killed everyone with a basic machine gun from a distance. Played
That
right
whole,
into it.
his whole part in that movie was ripping himself off.
Yeah,
Quite literally.
it was fantastic.
He even made the joke about the snake that bit him.
Yeah,
The snake died. I love it. It's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it was in excruciating agony, and 3 days later the snake died.
Okay, off topic there, yeah.
Yeah, carry on.
Not really, because like for anyone who doesn't know, Chuck Norris
Yeah.
is a bona fide, highly acclaimed mixed, or not mixed martial artist, but martial artist in several different disciplines.
You can call him a mixed martial artist.
Yeah, and he was saying, an early mixed martial artist, and he was saying Bruce Lee would have fucked him up, right? Now, there are rumors that Bruce holds the record for the most punches in 1 second, 9, and the most kicks in 1 second,
That's
6.
quick, dude.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I can't even lift my leg and bring it back down within a second.
Amongst a whole bunch of other impressive and crazy records, there is a rumor that he also achieved a punching power equal to that of Muhammad Ali's. Now, I don't know how they measure that or where it comes from, and there's no scientific evidence or factual proof to back this up, but these are the kind of things that fly around Bruce Lee. In addition to that, if you look at modern day mixed martial arts, or let's look at modern day mixed martial arts, and we go back into the early days of mixed martial arts. If you look at, and I'm going to use maybe a questionable example here, but something like Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa, where, okay, they were at the same weight. So it's not really what I'm trying to say. But if you look at the case of, you don't have to be big and muscly to beat up somebody who's bigger and stronger than you. All right. If you go back, Shaun, you will know a lot about Royce Gracie. Right, he was 80 kilograms when he was fighting in the UFC, in the first ever UFC tournaments that were put on back in 92, 93, I think it was.
When it was still a blood sport.
So he literally, like, there were no rules, right? That was the definition of no holds barred, and it was open weight.
Yeah.
So they didn't have weight divisions. And something interesting about Royce Gracie is that at 80 kilograms, he was fighting guys way heavier than him. He beat Ken Shamrock, who was 95 kilograms. Right, that's 15 kilograms heavier.
Ken Shamrock.
Yeah. And so here's another one. Royce Gracie, later on in his career, I think it was in Bellator, beat a sumo wrestler by the name of Chad Rowan, who had achieved a rank.
It's not the typical sumo wrestler name.
I was going to say that too. Yeah.
I think he was Hawaiian.
Okay.
And he had achieved the rank of Yokozuna, which is the highest rank that you can get in sumo wrestling.
I thought Yokozuna was a guy.
He was a WWF wrestler.
Okay, yes, okay,
yes.
I remember.
He did the sitting on an oak's face move.
Yeah.
I love it.
PG.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was Yokozuna,
Yeah.
but his name came from the highest rank of a sumo wrestler.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
This guy, Chad Rowan, was 6 foot, so 182 centimeters, and he weighed 484 pounds. That's 220 kilograms. Yeah. Okay. Royce Gracie beat him. He submitted him. Okay?
Jeez.
So we're talking something slightly different in terms of, obviously, Brazilian jiu-jitsu and fighting on the ground. But hold on a second. So there's even more stories of fighters in small, unknown and underground MMA promotions in weird places, beating people up to 90 kilograms heavier than them in open weight bouts. So it's not far-fetched. Small fighters, smaller, lighter fighters can beat big motherfuckers. Right? So that's the argument on the one side. Now let me play the devil's advocate role that I said I would. Here's the thing about Bruce Lee. Okay, as great as he was, unequivocally, he was untested as a martial artist. Right? He was untested and undocumented. There's only one real video on the internet that exists today that shows Bruce Lee fighting in a full contact tournament. And that was at the Long Beach International Karate Championships in 1968, where he fought one of the contestants in a full contact fight with protective gear. It was also incidentally the tournament in the video where he demonstrated the 1-inch punch. With Joe Louis as well, incidentally, the karate world champion. We should actually share this. I'll find all these clips. We'll find all these clips. We'll share them on our page so you guys can check out everything that we're speaking
Maybe
about.
we'll put it into an article to actually explain it all.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Now, if you watch that full contact fight, it's fascinating, right? You can see that he was a master of kinetic energy and movement and philosophy and everything he speaks about in Jeet Kune Do, and also a lot of principles from Wing Chun Kung Fu is present. The guy never got close to Bruce Lee. Okay, he, as much as he tried all the techniques he tried, he never got close to Bruce, and Bruce was basically just moving around and picking him apart. It's a pleasure to watch. It's a marvel to watch. But you know, if you think about Bruce Lee fighting some random kind of competitor, you'd think about something like that being over in like 9 to 10 seconds in devastating, ridiculous movie-like fashion.
But he was also an entertainer.
That wasn't the case. Yeah, 100%. Now, there's other things, right? There's obviously the legend of Bruce fighting Wong Jack Man and losing. So I did a little bit of research. There's a movie that recently came out. I don't know how recent it is, but it's called Birth of the Dragon, where they basically portray this fight where Wong Jack Man, who, this is real, by the way, he did fight Wong Jack Man, who was a young Kung Fu master who had come to America at the time. The reasons why they fought are different. Some people claim, including Bruce's wife, that it was because Bruce Lee was the first person to teach Oriental Eastern martial arts to anyone. White, black, Indian, didn't matter who they were, what your race was, where you came from, what your background was. He wanted to teach martial arts to everyone. And the powers that be in Wing Chun and Kung Fu strongly opposed that, and allegedly sent Wong Jack Man to the States to go and challenge Bruce Lee and make sure that he stopped doing this. The other story is that Bruce Lee did, this is fact, basically he was, like you say, he was a showman, and he was at a tournament one stage preaching Jeet Kune Do and the philosophy that all your limited styles are pretty much useless, and that you should buy into the philosophy that you should pull what is useful and discard what isn't, and issued a challenge to anyone in the area to come and take him on in a fight to witness how this went down. And they say that one of the guys who was there, he got really upset, went to Wong Jack Man and told him that this challenge had been issued, and that's why they fought. Whole bunch of different accounts of who won. A lot of people say that Wong Jack Man won. A lot of people say that Bruce Lee won. Some people claim it was a draw. We'll never know because it was completely undocumented. There's only eyewitness testimonies, but they're all different. But again, like there's an account of in a real fight, no holds barred, that Bruce Lee might have lost. And then there's the age-old debate of Bruce Lee versus Muhammad Ali, right? Who were living and competing much at the same time. Now, a lot of people, there was a big hype around because they were the two biggest martial arts stars of their time, albeit Bruce Lee as an actor and a producer and a director, but still one of the biggest burgeoning martial arts stars in the world. And of course, Muhammad Ali, who was at the time the greatest boxer that had ever lived.
You can talk about Bruce Lee all day, can't you?
Shit, you noticed?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll speed this up and cut it short. A lot of people said that Bruce Lee could have beaten Muhammad Ali, but there is a report from Complex magazine that one of the guys who was working with him on the films one day had basically asked him about it, and Bruce Lee actually studied Muhammad Ali. He studied his footwork. He used to set up mirrors around the room while he was watching Muhammad Ali on TV to mimic him and basically mimic his movement and fight his movement in the mirrors while he was watching him on TV. That's the length that Bruce Lee went to study Muhammad Ali. One day they asked him what would happen if he fought Muhammad Ali. And I quote, "Look at my hand," he said. "That's a little Chinese hand. He'd kill me."
I love that. That's a martial artist, dude. That's a
So
martial artist response.
to finish off this side of the argument, what I want to put to you guys now to discuss quickly. If Bruce Lee fought Khabib, for example, what would happen? Khabib, who is 5'8" tall and weighs in 155 pounds, 70 kilograms.
You mean
wrestling
200
extraordinaire.
pounds or?
Yes, Craig. John Jones, 6'3", 198 centimeters, weighs in at 93 kilograms, 205 pounds. Francis Ngannou, right, weighing in at 193 centimeters, 6'3" as well, 113 kilograms, 250 pounds. Mike Tyson, 100 kilograms. Muhammad
It's like
Ali,
a truck.
104 kilograms. Conor McGregor, Stephen Thompson, Wonderboy, a lot of people have said that if Bruce Lee trained in mixed martial arts and competed in the UFC today, he would be a world champion, no doubt, in and around his weight division. Of that, I have absolutely no doubt. I don't argue. Everyone wishes they could see it. It's the marvel that time that will stand the test of time.
Man.
But is Bruce Lee the undefeatable, unhuman martial artist that popular culture makes him out to be?
No, he just isn't. And it's not a bad thing. The fact that he admits that Ali would fuck him up completely, that is a sign of a martial artist. Remember, and it's something my coach said to me when Cesar Lima out of Brighton, Grand Union, one of my teammates asked him, what would you do if one of your students had to beat you? He was like, I'd be proud. The whole purpose.
It's the definition of a mentor.
The whole purpose of me coaching you is for you to beat people like me. That's the whole purpose. And when you think about the lineage of martial artists and their coaches, it's a very sort of, there's a big division, and things that have been found out to be not useful in self-defense, nor is even techniques that Bruce Lee might have used are completely outdated and just wouldn't work in a fight. But like you said, if Bruce Lee existed today, his attention to detail is what beats other people. Remember, small guys don't beat big guys because they just somehow beat them. They're better because they understand positions better. They understand weaknesses better. They understand how to take advantage of weaknesses. And also speed is a big thing. And Bruce Lee was fucking quick. So he would have the analytical power to understand other people's games. He just the way that he would study their video, I can see him doing that. And a lot of guys like Poirier, McGregor, all of them, a lot of the top guys will study video. And by the way, guys, video is the best way to improve. Go check out our website. We do this. It's
strictlyfighters.com, by the way, if he's going to mention it.
And in
Like,
all
comment,
honesty,
share, fucking subscribe.
In all honesty, dude, I think Bruce Lee would be a double champ, like McGregor would be, because he wouldn't be happy with just beating everyone in his own weight division. He would want to go up and see how, and essentially test himself, because that was what he was all about. What could I do against someone else? Even though he knew Muhammad Ali would fuck him up, he would still train to try and beat him. That's martial artist.
I think Bruce Lee would be the Ronaldo of martial arts, purely from a discipline perspective, a work rate perspective, and the drive to be the best, and always testing himself to be the best. I top 5 heavyweights he probably doesn't beat, but I do believe he can beat a heavyweight. But people like Jones, people like Ngannou, they will maul you to death. If they just get hold of you, if you're only weighing what you said, 63 kilograms, 64 it's difficult to get away from a guy that weighs that amount and hits like a truck, and you're stuck in a cage with him.
But this is the thing, right? Like, people, I don't think, like, you will never understand taking a shot from somebody who's way bigger than you and trying to fight them off and trying to fight off this kind of body weight and mass. If you have never been in that scenario and you've never been in that situation, and if you've never been in even sparred in mixed martial arts, and you think that I'm being very blunt, but you think that somebody like Bruce Lee could just come in and fuck somebody like John Jones up?
No.
You just don't understand. That's what I'm trying to bring to the masses here, is like, John Jones fights 3, 4, 5 times a year. trains every day, spars every day in the most real life type fighting shit that you get on this planet.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like there is no substitute for that. And that is why John Jones and, for example, Francis Ngannou and the top mixed martial artists in the world who compete in the top MMA promotions in the world, dude, those are the toughest, hardest men on the planet.
Mm.
You can have guys theoretically better martial artists or have trained longer or have more, you know what I mean? Like have experience in 1,000 different kung fu tournaments or karate tournaments or whatever you want to speak about. You can have guys who are steroid motherfucker jacked up guys who are way bigger and way stronger, maybe aesthetically. But the point I'm trying to make is the top light heavyweight and heavyweight guys in MMA and in the UFC, those are the real life heroes of our age when it comes
BMFs.
to martial art.
Yeah, but here's the caveat, right? So yes, Bruce Lee might not be able to take on a Jones, but when we started this conversation right at the beginning, we're talking about GOAT pound for pound.
Mm-hmm.
If Bruce Lee trained in MMA, would he be the GOAT pound for pound? I'd say yes.
Yeah.
We almost have to believe that, right?
Yeah.
You have to. We don't want to kill the dream too much, but yes, I would say GOAT pound for pound. But if you wanted to go with the mystery of he's just going to take on anyone, no, it's unrealistic. These guys are trained in how many different martial arts, and if they get hold of you, he's going to tear you apart.
We need to distinguish, I think, between the types of goats we're talking about. We're talking about competitive goats, and we're talking about what's a better term for philosophical goats? Someone who's had such an impact on martial art that it's become a cultural phenomenon. You know what I mean?
That is a good distinguish, because, so for example, I would argue in modern day MMA, that kind of goat that you're speaking about from a philosophical, influential, scalability perspective of impact, Conor McGregor is the GOAT. There is no one, when you put it all together, that has done more for the sport of MMA than Conor McGregor. Do you know what I mean? But having said that, he's far from the conversation of the best mixed martial artist of all time.
But by that logic, I think we could also include someone like Royce Gracie in the argument. He brought grappling, he brought jiu-jitsu to the forefront. Everyone was strikers. No one knew what martial arts would work. He showed the world what martial art actually works. So, and I mean,
he revolutionized martial arts.
He revolutionized it. But then look at Hickson Gracie. Hickson Gracie did the same thing on the Asian circuit. Dude, there's so many.
Wow, they all called Gracie.
They're the Gracie family.
Okay. Oh yeah, the founding family. The founding family. Okay, I remember now.
Hickson Gracie was supposed to be the UFC champ. He was supposed to start with UFC 1-2, but he was too imposing. He was too large. So they wanted jiu-jitsu to be the small man's art. They wanted to show how effective it was. So they essentially sent Hickson Gracie to Asia, and he dominated the Asian circuit, and Royce Gracie dominated UFC. So the North American, European circuit. They did that on purpose because they wanted to show how someone like Royce Gracie was able to dominate at every single level against every single fighter that was on the cards at the time. So yeah, man, when you're talking about GOATs, we got to look a bit more than just who's dominating at this point. And how much money they've made.
and that's why I'm going to keep making the argument of the greatest martial arts movie of all time, Joe. Which one? which is not just a good fighting movie, but what made the biggest public impact?
Dude, Enter the Dragon was and always will be so far bigger.
For martial artists, yes.
No,
for the public?
Arts, for martial arts.
Stop shouting.
For martial arts. He's a useless shot, that boy.
He's a useless shot.
Punish him for me, Earl. Look, we want to believe in the legend of Bruce Lee the Dragon because it's such a great story.
It is. And everyone loves a good story, right?
Yeah, and I want to believe, and it took me a long time to come to terms with this, and then even to be able to speak about it in a public forum. But it is what it is. I think we've unpacked this for people who were under this illusion, it's up to, hey guys, make up your own mind, right? Go and do your research, go and watch the videos. We'll share a whole bunch of stuff in the coming days about
tell us
all
what
of
you
this.
think.
But yeah, let's hear. I mean, again, let's hear it. Like
I've
this
got,
is just three
I've got
stooges chatting shit.
I've got a controversial question for you. Talk about another movie star quickly. So Jackie Chan in the ring and Jackie Chan in out of the ring. Can he take down a heavyweight? In the ring, no. Out of the ring, with couches, chairs,
I see him
things.
jumping into. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, he's good in movies. I just don't know.
But
Same-
apparently, that's what in his interviews he's trained to use anything and everything around him as a weapon.
You
So
can see that, right? That's real. And he
Yeah,
does all his own stunts.
exactly. So against a heavyweight in real life, it's very difficult to doubt Jackie Chan's abilities. Like,
Look, I think
outside of the
Jackie
ring.
Chan he's a real martial artist as well, right? You don't get to the level of what he can do and what he displays by not being a real martial artist. But again, it's that age-old debate of, well, how good are martial artists who are actors primarily? How good are they really? Could they hang could they hang in MMA? Could they hang in real tournaments, even just in their own style?
Yeah.
Who knows until somebody actually fucking does it.
That's what I'm saying. In the ring, yeah, probably gets absolutely destroyed. But if you give that guy anything and everything around him, man's got skills.
But let's look at the reason people fight in MMA. It's for the money, guys. It's for the money. Jackie Chan's got more than enough money. He'd never come to a ring.
Yeah, he's got far more money than anyone in UFC, man.
Dude, that's just you've just opened Pandora's box. You've just provided us with the potential main meat of another podcast episode, because I've got
all the
a lot
UFC
to say
fighters
about
become
that.
actors.
I've got a lot to say about that.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
So let's finish it off this way, right? No, this argument. No one will ever know how good Bruce Lee was, or could have been, or would be today. And the beauty of something like that is it's just always going to be left up to your imagination.
Yeah.
So what does your imagination say? Tell us. Let's
It's
carry
like
on the debate. Let's keep the memory alive.
It's like an open ending to a movie. You gotta love it. You just gotta make up what you think's best, right?
Yeah. All right. Two more things before we finish off here, boys. Tomorrow night, or we're recording now, Friday night, on April the 9th, the beginning of the light heavyweight Grand Prix in Bellator MMA. We spoke about this in our first episode. It's super exciting. There's some big names. Basically, what they're doing is they're putting on a tournament in Bellator MMA to decide who the light heavyweight champion will be. We have the likes of Rumble Johnson, Yoel Romero, Corey Anderson, Ryan Bader, Lyoto Machida.
How's it?
Yep, Nemkov, who's there, a whole bunch of really fucking crazy cool MMA fighters who are competing in this Grand Prix tournament to get to a final where they will compete for the light heavyweight title. Friday night, we have Ryan Bader versus Lyoto Machida. Okay. Ryan Bader is 27-6 in MMA. That's his record. Lyoto Machida is 26-10. They are both former UFC fighters, if I'm not mistaken.
Bader was a double champ, and Makita was a champ.
What do you mean
UFC.
a double champ?
Yeah.
Bader was a double champ in Bellator, I believe.
Oh, in Bellator.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So
it means nothing. We've all heard what you think of Bellator.
No. What I was going to say is that Conor McGregor is the first ever champ in the UFC.
It only means something because it's UFC. It's the highest echelon of fighting. So yes, I agree. But Bader was a double champ within Bellator, I believe.
Yeah, and Lyoto Machida was a UFC light heavyweight champion. Yeah. So pedigree. We're talking pedigree in this fight. It's going to be a goodie.
Yeah, he's a karate guy. Machida.
Yep. Yeah. Yep, and Machida beat Bader in 2012.
By KO. TKO. What was it?
KO in second round.
So there's pedigree and history. Where did that fight take place? What promotion? In the UFC?
I'm not sure. Let me have a look.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that they'd fought before. My research has failed me.
that's okay. We got your back. We got your back, Jack.
It would have been a simple Bader versus Machida search.
But yeah,
Machida's
Machida's got one up on him. So
he's a little bit older. He's a little bit older though, isn't he? He's
yeah.
of a
Listen, you're talking
past
9 years.
generation, if
You're
you will.
talking 9 years later. Literally revisiting a fight 9 years later. That's anything could happen. You cannot go on past experience on that one.
I'm excited. I'm excited for Rumble Johnson, all of them.
I'm definitely going to watch, right?
Yeah, it's a crazy card, that, man.
We don't watch Bellator as often as we should. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Even one championship, like I loved watching that.
Yeah.
The production is cool. The announcers, dude, the announcers in one championship are epic. You'll never beat Bruce Buffer, but yeah, I enjoyed the whole experience. So I'm looking forward to watching Bellator. You guys should watch. Everyone should watch.
The commentators on one championship sound like they're watching football. The Spanish football commentators, Ronaldo, the Oxo kicking off on the mic in the one championship one. It's incredible to watch. They really know how to boost the crowd.
Well, right, boys. If you wanna hazard some predictions at that fight, you're welcome to go ahead. I'm gonna set us up quickly for our celebrity deathmatch.
Nice. I think I'm gonna stick with Machida.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick with Machida, but just because he's got one up on Beta already, and I think he's got his number. Especially if it's a KO in the second round. I mean, that's dominance. It's not like they went to decision. I think he's got his number, but who knows? Ryan Bader's he could win on the day.
I think Machida just spent too much time in the premium division of UFC to be able. I think he'll take it again.
Okay, cool. I'm not educated enough on these two fighters really to make an informed prediction. Out of legacy, I would probably say if I had to put money on, I would put money on Machida. But Shaun, to your point, I mean, look at Francis Ngannou in 3-4 years. How much did he improve? I mean, every fight's a different fight. So
Ryan Bader's a beast, dude. Ryan Bader's a beast. But I don't want to take anything away from Machida, dude. I'm a big fan of Machida.
As far as I am aware, Ryan Bader is like Craig, you were right. He's the former light heavyweight champion in Bellator, and he's the current heavyweight champion. So that's a matchup. Get to it.
I'm there.
Get to it. All right, boys. Let's finish off with our traditional celebrity death match. I have the draw ready, and I'm going to press the button.
Push it. Press it.
Is it Craig Else versus someone?
You're not in that filter yet, Craig.
This is beautiful.
I'm famous in my family. Carry on.
Joe Rogan.
Oh wow.
Versus Mick Jagger.
Yes.
What's the fight? Drinking.
Okay, so hold on. I'm gonna quickly check out.
You know, one of them is famous for being a fighter, not just fucking around.
Black belt in jiu-jitsu. Kickboxing.
Yeah. And got what, the hardest kick in the world or something? What's it?
No, not the hardest kick, but he's got a fucking hard kick.
No, but he apparently
didn't he train this with Michael Jai White? I've heard him on his podcast talking about this.
MJW, man.
Didn't he? I think he did.
I think he did.
He was supposed. Joe Rogan was supposed to fight Wesley Snipes at one point. So, like it was all scheduled and everything. I think one of them. Wesley Snipes pulled out.
We're gonna drop this in one of the podcast episodes in the very near future of which real like fighters, celebrity fighters could actually compete, like MJW, like Wesley Snipes. Do these like stand a chance at all? I mean, geez, like
Joe Rogan takes it.
Dude, hold on. Mick Jagger, the ageless lead singer of the Rolling Stones.
He doesn't age.
Trained judo under George Kerr. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and I may be, George Kerr was the man that trained with Bruce Lee that actually introduced Bruce Lee to grappling.
Didn't he fuck Bruce Lee up on isn't George Kerr that bodyguard? Wasn't he the bodyguard that fucked Bruce Lee up? on that set, the movie set. I think it was in that movie, something in Hollywood, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The most
Oh
recent.
yes. No, that's with Brad Pitt.
Yeah, Brad Pitt.
Yes, I know the one you're speaking of.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, Kerr's, legendary. But although I still think Rogan takes it, man.
Yeah, and Mick Jagger's got some rust.
Judo's good. Yeah. There's some holes.
Yeah, okay. I was clutching at straws.
Yeah, mate. And the amount of snow that guy's probably been under in his life, it's unbelievable.
Joe Rogan. Have you seen that?
For everyone under 18, we're talking about avalanches.
Yeah.
Did you see that fight of Joe Rogan's? One of his taekwondo. I think it's the only taekwondo video of his on YouTube. I think he got a KO with a roundhouse kick, or not a roundhouse kick. What do you call it? A rear pick. You're a karate guy, taekwondo.
Well, explain the kick to me.
Not a roundhouse kick, and you turn backwards, spinning back kick.
Spinning back kick. Okay.
Yeah. Spinning back kick, KO to the body with taekwondo.
Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
We've got to check this out. Yeah, we're going to check all of the stuff out. We'll share
like I said, apparently Joe Rogan's got one of the craziest kicks in the world. Like
he's got a mean back. Yeah, he's got a mean spinning back kick. Yeah.
Interesting.
Incidentally, he's also a podcast host, famously.
Joe Rogan, come on the show. Come on the show. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Oh, jeez. I'm gonna end this. I'm gonna end this, boys.
It's getting ridiculous.
It's getting ridiculous. The beer's finished.
It's done, guys. It's done. I need to get another.
My glass is empty, but my bottle is not. And like the great Bruce Lee once said, be whiskey, my friend.
We're gonna get a shirt, mate. That's a shirt.
Be whiskey. With dash Bruce Willis.
Okay, guys, we're done. We're over. We're starting to trash things.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for everything. Thanks for the show, guys. Like we said, hit us up with your views and your comments on all the shit that we speak about.
Like and comment, subscribe,
comment.
Send us a dick pic. We're down for it.
I'm gonna have to cut that out.
I'm willing to critique it. All right, let's keep going.
All right, boys. We'll see you next week,
guys.
Same place, same
next
time.
Week.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers, guys.